Like to learn more about God's Garage? Visit our website at godsgarage.org. Or you can contact us and we would be glad to come and make a presentation to your group.
A Lone Star Community Radio is ready for the summer. If you or anyone you know is looking for summer internship opportunities, a Lone Star Community Radio is a great place to grab the mic and be on the air. A Lone Star Community Radio offers a great opportunity to those interested in learning about the radio world all year round. Be an on-air personality, talk show producer, or YouTube, TV, podcast editor. Contact the station at info@irlonestar.com or call the station's message line at 936-647-3776.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZWLP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and this is Rick Schissler. I'm your host. I'm also a Silver Fox advisor and the founder of bestconsult.com. We're broadcasting live today from the studios of Lone Star Community Radio, which is located in downtown Conroe, Texas, one of the fastest growing cities in America today. So it's a wonderful, wonderful place to be to talk about business. It's interesting that the Weekly Business Hour is here in Conroe, the county, Montgomery County, Texas. The county itself is one of the fastest growing counties as well. So there's lots of great business going on here, and hopefully throughout today's show that we'll talk about business topics that you have interest in. We invite you to join that conversation. I'll talk to you in just a moment about that. We offer ideas that we feel that can improve your business, and really we want everybody to be part of this conversation. And the best way to do that is drop me an email. You got a business challenge, you got a comment about the show, you'd like to see something, you'd like us to bring a certain expertise to the show, we can do all that. Just drop me an email. That's at Rick, R-I-C-K, at irlonestar.com. That's Rick at irlonestar.com. Love to hear from you. We're going to go to the mailbag today, later in the show, in the second half of the show. Received, I think, a great question from one of our listeners, and we'll talk about it. So you might even get to be part of the show. So drop me those emails, rick at irlonestar.com. I want to let you also know, as I try to do every week, the show is broadcast live on Facebook and YouTube. So if you'd like to watch the show as well as listen, we're available on video. Just go to Facebook, YouTube, type in the Weekly Business Hour, and then click on the button there, and you can watch as well as listen to what we're doing. Today, I think we've got a wonderful guest. We were talking before we went on the air. He really comes to the show with two great expertise. One, he's a business owner, like many of y'all, and two, he's an expert. And I always love to have experts because hopefully, again, the educational component to teach our listeners something that could be beneficial to them and their business is one of the major things I try to do with this program. So without further ado, I want to introduce to you Scott Williams. He's owner of a company, Juggernaut, and we'll talk about that, Juggernaut Payment Processing. And we're going to discuss what I think is kind of the mysterious world, at least it feels that way sometimes, of card payment processing. In fact, I was mentioning to someone earlier about the guest and what we're going to be doing on this week's show, and they said, I never understood all that, all the fees and all of this and that. And, I think what happens, though, unfortunately, a lot of us as business owners, we don't understand it, so we just kind of ignore it and hope for the best, hope we're paying a fair price for what we're getting, and hope that it works consistently, and hope. But that's good. But we're going to talk and hopefully convey to you some expertise and a resource that can help you get the best fee structure and the best service for your particular business. Well, Scott Williams, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick. Glad to be here.
Well, I have to start off, and you and I were kind of laughing about this before the show started. Juggernaut. Tell us about that name. I mean, that's a word we don't hear very often in the English language.
No, it's a semi-old word. I think it started about 200 years ago, and I think it comes from India, from what I gathered. But if anybody likes comic books, you heard the word Juggernaut. It's a comic book character, yes. I heard the term actually when I was younger from my dad, and it just, for some reason, that word just stuck. And then when I learned comic books, it just took on a new life. And technically, I wanted to name my real estate company that me and my wife started a few years back, Juggernaut, and she nixed that real quick. And so when I got a chance to start this company, that's what I called it, because it literally means an unstoppable force. And for some reason, that just resonates with me so well.
Well, to me, it is a good name, but again, it's not a word that we hear very often, so it's memorable to me. So when someone hears about you, you're offering a service, and sometimes people, at least in small business, will be busy and they won't get around to taking care of it or contacting you, so they remember your name. So that there's nothing wrong with that.
Yes, sir. That's
And I might just agree with your wife though. Real estate, I don't, because I come with a real estate background as well. But again, you had a chance to do it and you did it your way.
Yes, sir.
Right? That's what owning a business is all about, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Well, tell us a little bit about your background in business. What brought you to that point where you started this company in the card payment processing business?
So business for me started back in 2013. I was actually laid off from a job and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I loved working out. It's been a hobby of mine for most half my life. And I love CrossFit. So me and my wife decided to move and open a CrossFit. And that's kind of where the bug started. And about a year later, after we started the CrossFit, we sold it. We moved back to Texas because we were living in Utah when we had the CrossFit. And came back, and me and my wife started looking for other things to do. And so we started real estate and kind of escalated from there. And I found out about processing through a couple that I met. And I was like, that's a real interesting business model of how all of it worked, because I have ADHD really bad, and anything to deal with numbers, I'm all over it. I can go through a P&L and try to figure out what's going on, what's going wrong, and then I like trying to figure out how to fix it. And so when I found out about processing, I was all like, that seems like fun. And so over the past 3 years, I've just slowly grown it. I've kind of moved away from the real estate part and let my wife take care of that, and I've been working on this business.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt there are a lot of numbers involved in payment processing.
Mm-hmm.
Just as I had mentioned earlier about having a conversation with someone, and that was what got them. There were just so many pieces to the puzzle, and a lot of it is kind of mysterious because
Mm-hmm.
it involves different layers, different companies, some huge international companies.
Yep.
I mean, you really, as a small business, it's a real challenge. One of the challenges you have, I think, of finding the right processor.
It is. It's really tough because sometimes it's one of the last things you're thinking about when you're getting your business up and running. And if it's working, you just kind of leave it there because if you don't understand it, it gets really complicated and you just don't want to deal with it. And I get that. And that's why I try to step in and be like, try to make things as simple as possible so you understand what's going on.
Well, I think the other thing I've observed in working with business over the last, almost 20 years, being a business advisor or mentor, is that people, like you say, they get busy running the business. It's not high on the priority list. But the fact is that it's not a very competitive business. In other words, I'm a small business. Where do I go to shop my payment processing?
Yeah.
Where can I connect?
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to that question.
So I know in the Houston area, I want to say there's around 50 processors. And some of them range from, small like I am to some of the bigger names. But you also have the other ones like you have Square and you have Toast, and they're amazing at marketing. That's why so many people go to them, because you type in payment processing, one of the first things that's going to come up is Square, Stripe, things like that. With that, they make it real easy to get signed up. The bad part is you're going to pay for that on the back end, and people don't realize it.
Yeah, it really takes money really off the top. Every dollar you take in that's run through the credit card payment system, they get their percentage off the top, and their overhead and expense really is a back end operation. So it's not. It's very interesting. Let's back up for just a moment. Explain to people, if you would, to the listener, of what really is payment processing, credit card payment processing. What is that?
Basically, credit card processing is how a customer pays when that customer pays to get those funds from whatever credit card that they're using into that merchant's bank account. That is the simplest thing I can probably make it. There's about 10 steps in between that, but you don't really need to know those steps. It's just making sure everything is copacetic from that credit card to that merchant's bank account.
So the idea is that someone comes in and I accept a credit card as payment for my services or my products, and so they pay with it online, in person, whatever, and I enter it into the system, which I guess is pretty much all of it's digital. Don't have those knuckle busters anymore, do we? So once it goes in, it becomes a digital transaction, and like you say, there 10 steps?
There's 5 to 10 steps, and it goes from making sure that there's enough funds in the account for it to be processed. If it's not, it kicks back. I mean, but you can see that within that 10-second span of them swiping that card, what's going on.
That's a blink of an eye. I mean, more or less.
Yeah.
So the idea is that I, as the merchant, as the vendor, I want to make sure I get paid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
basically
the deal.
Make sure the merchant gets paid.
And you get paid. And but from there, it's kind of like all bets off, depending on who you use, how quickly that transaction gets put in your bank account. I mean, at least that's been some of my personal experience.
Yeah.
There are variables that are out there that I suspect that many of us who have taken on credit cards, and I'm going way back, Knucklebuster kind of gives it away, right? But there are all kinds of things that do happen, and some process quicker than others. You get your money quicker, at least that used to be an issue. And other things like that, the reliability of the system being up.
Yeah.
Even, I don't know if that's much of a problem anymore, but I know it used to be a problem.
It still happens, yeah. It still happens, yeah.
So all of a sudden I take credit cards, but I don't because I can't process it. So there are all kinds of, you got to find that reliability in any vendor you use. It's interesting. Well, what is Juggernaut Payment Processing? I mean, you say, are you a consultant? I mean, what role do you really play?
I play, it's basically full circle with me. So I will start off as a consultant. I will take a look at the merchant statement, and I will see where they can actually save, whether it's the transaction or the fees themselves, which there's really 3 parts. You have the fees, you have every time it swipes, there's a percentage that's taken out. With that also, there's a transaction fee, which is usually like 10, 15, 25 cents. And then you have your miscellaneous fees, which are usually monthly or yearly. So I'll go through that and I'll run through the whole statement to see where I can save money for that customer. Then the next step after that is, well, are they going to need a new POS system? If they don't, I can go ahead and sometimes I'll just interject basically a code after we do the application and all that other stuff and get them okayed to get processed through the processing bank. I can interject a code to see if I can integrate into their POS system. If not, we can go look at another POS system. And then with that, I also go through and install the POS system, and then I'm there hands-on completely after that until the business goes under, hopefully not.
Well, it sounds like you offer options depending on where somebody is and I guess who they choose as a credit card processing company. Yep. Like you said, the POS systems. My system may be up to speed and not need, but the ability to offer that full, what I call full service, and come in, and because you're solving a problem, right?
Yeah.
You're there to solve it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can run anything from like a small mom and pop donut shop all the way up to a Home Depot. So it really kind of depends on what type of business it is and what exactly their needs are.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because that's one of the things that's really, really interesting. I mean, because a lot of this varies by industry. That it's just interesting to me. This is complex. Well, let's talk about fees and cost. You talked about, I think, 3 different fees, if you will, or costs. The initial percentage, typically a percentage of the transaction. Then there's regular fees, processing fees, then there's miscellaneous fees. For the average small business processor or needing processing services, what are they looking at just in general? They're looking at a percentage, and what's the range on that?
So here's the hard part. So there's roughly like 300 credit cards in use. I'm just going to say that each credit card, depending on whether it's just a regular credit card or it's an award or a rewards card, has got different interchange rates. So that's just the cost of doing business with the credit card companies.
Now,
So
is that a flat fee or a percentage?
it's scaling. So it depends on the credit card. It depends on the subtype of the credit card. So, I mean, it ranges. So me personally, what I try to do is I try to take all the credit cards themselves, like when I actually look at that statement, and see exactly how many Visas, how many MasterCards, how many Discover, how many American Express, to really get a good idea of what they're actually paying for it. Because then that next step is part of that transaction fee is what you call the markup. And that's how we make our money, is by the markup. They usually separate that out on that merchant statement, so I can usually kind of tell what it is. But you still have to do calculations to make sure everything's copacetic within that statement and what you're seeing. So I look at that markup and I take a look at it, be like, okay, so they're using these many credit cards. This is the markup. How much can we bring that down to save them money? And then I'll turn around and I'll look at the transaction fees, because sometimes those transaction fees will also vary with the card itself. And I try to make it flat across all of them. So I'll take it. Most of the time, I'm seeing anywhere between 10 and 25 cents a transaction. And that also depends on if it's online or if it's in person. Online is going to be a lot higher because it's all about risk mitigation, and that those increased from online to in person is just the banks taking that risk, because most of the risk happens online.
So really what the at least the first, or one of, but the first one you discussed as far as cost to me as a business is going to be the type of card I take. So if I take Visa and I take MasterCard, and of course everybody knows about American Express, it's always a little more expensive. And I recall a situation when I was in business, rewards cards. One time on a transaction, we took a rewards card, and I forgot what it was, tremendous rewards. It was like 8% total cost or something like that. So
Really?
I'm going back 20, 30 years ago. But I mean, it just stood out when we analyzed the statement, so on and so forth. But I mean, it had a tremendous rewards. I mean, it was really.
Yeah, and a lot of business owners don't know that. Like those credit cards, those rewards, the business owner's paying for that, not the credit card.
You're
company.
paying for the vacation,
You're paying
right?
for that vacation, yeah. So, I mean, that's just another thing that you have to kind of look at as well, because you're going to be the one paying that stuff.
Yeah, and that's a big issue, and I hope folks heard that. I mean, when someone spends money with you and have got one of the reward cards or cash back or whatever, and it makes no sense to me at all in the transaction, you as the person who accepts the card to pay for your goods and services, you're paying for that cash back, for that airplane ticket, whatever upgrade, whatever it is.
It makes sense to Visa and MasterCard, but it doesn't make sense to the business owner.
Well, I learned that the hard way, like I said, in a business where one time a regular customer used, we were in a service business, business-to-business service business. They bought some equipment, and boy, it was unbelievable to see that cost of doing that transaction.
Yeah.
In fact, we told them we couldn't accept that card anymore.
Really?
Going forward.
Yeah.
It was just too damn expensive. But I guarantee you, most of us out there doing business, we don't know that that's the case.
Nope. I mean, you're not seeing the card anymore because it's all on the customer now with the dip and the swipe and the insert. Like, your business owners aren't taking those cards anymore.
Right.
So.
Well, and again, the first thing is, ladies and gentlemen, that is the type of card, the brand of card, reward card. I mean, it gets, like you said, there's subgroups. It's pretty damn complex.
Yeah.
But that is what helps determine what you pay to have credit card processing.
Yep.
Well, Scott, we're to the point we need to take a break.
Okay.
I have a commercial or two here on Lone Star Community Radio. And ladies and gentlemen, I encourage you, stay put And we're going to be back and continue this conversation so that we hopefully will encourage you to check out your credit card processing fees and maybe perhaps save you a lot of money. It's amazing what it adds up to. So please stay with us.
Don't miss Lone Star Community Radio on TV and YouTube. Our talk show and music shows are featured on Our City TV, Suddenlink Channel 12, and have their own YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to keep up with posted shows and comment on them below the video.
What can the Better Living for Texans program do for you? You can learn how to increase your consumption of fruits and vegetables, choose foods that are relatively inexpensive and good to eat, make your food dollars last longer, prepare quick, nutritious meals, help your children learn how to eat healthier snacks, and much more. Our program is committed to helping people like you improve your health through providing research-based nutrition education in a friendly, cost-free, and relaxed environment. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. Appreciate you sticking with us. And back, our guest today, Scott Williams. He's the owner of Juggernaut Payment Processing, and we're talking about processing payment, credit card processing payments, and the cost. And, you know, Scott, it's really the hidden cost, because even though it's right there in black and white, very few of us, I believe, in business either take the time or have the knowledge to sit down and do the pencil work, if you will, and add it all up and figure out what our cards are really costing us. 1, 2, 3, 4%, whatever. Yeah. It's pretty darn amazing. So when we took the break, we had talked about the fact that what type of cards we take, a little more complicated than Visa or MasterCard versus American Express, but there are different fees and things that different types of cards as well as brands of cards require. One of the other things you made me aware, because I went to one of your seminars, you put it on at the Conroe, Lake Conroe Chamber. It was a wonderful seminar presentation you made, very educational, and really made people aware of what they're dealing with their credit cards. But it's the fact, and this is kind of the second thing, I guess, there's also a cost or a charge based on the industry you're in.
Yes.
So if I'm in the convenience store industry, or I have a client that is in the IT service industry, and he pays more than, say, a restaurant or something like that. Tell us a little bit about that and how that works into things.
So if it's in-person transactions, it's always going to be less because the banks consider that less fraudulent. It starts to scale itself when you get online, and that's because most fraud happens online. A lot of these, if you ever heard of the black web or the dark web, your information is bought and sold so many times over, it's not even funny. So what these scammers do is they'll get on the black web or dark web and buy just a ton of credit card numbers, and they'll sit there and just input them until one pings. And they'll do low transaction amounts, I mean $10, $15, because nobody's going to really notice that. And so when one pings and they pick it up, that's when everything happens. And it happens really fast when they start using it. And what credit card companies do, if they start seeing what they're looking for really odd purchases. I don't know if you've ever you traveled and you've gone outside your little area and then all of a sudden your credit card stops working. It's because it's outside of your normal spending habits. So that's what they're looking for. But it might take them a little bit before they actually see it. And so that's the reason why those rates are a lot higher for online, because they're basically taking that risk on, and you're basically in charge for the risk. And
there's still fraud, though, obviously, in person, where somebody steals a number, steals a card, shows up, goes on a shopping spree, if you will. Yeah. And I guess has dummy ID, fake ID to go along with it. But yeah, it's all about risk and the billions and billions of dollars that the credit card companies lose. Yep. And like most businesses, they're not there just to give it away. No. They're trying to make a profit. Mm-hmm. And so I forget, most figure 50, 100 billion a year is just a huge number. Yeah. That is, fraud takes place. Oh yeah. And a lot of times it's my impression and my experience that the fraud really goes back to the user. the card carrier is where the fraud is given its opportunity to.
Yeah, I mean, it's really protecting where the sites that you go on, and how you conduct yourself in public. Also, is what I found. People don't try to steal your stuff if you're very confident, very aware of what you're going on, because they're watching you the entire time. Because they're looking for suspects. They're looking for people walking in a certain way, going down the street, or and things of that nature. One of the things I do hate is having to give a credit card to a server, because I've known people who have gotten their card scammed from a server. So it's just being very aware of your surroundings.
The server situation used to happen real frequently. I don't know if it does anymore, but I've took to paying cash when I go out to eat most of the time. So.
Well, now they have the at table service. That's one of my products that I do offer is the handheld ordering. So your servers don't have to take those credit cards anymore. They can do it right there at the table.
Right.
And that's gonna lower the fraudulent.
Yeah, makes
issues.
sense.
Yeah.
Well, let's kind of back up for a second. In the time we have left, one of the things is we've talked about two major areas that impact what you pay as a business owner to process your credit cards. What are some of the other fees or charges that I have to be aware of?
Your monthly fees. So with your monthly fees, sometimes they charge you to be able to get access to your account, which I think is kind of bogus. They'll charge you for a paper fee. They'll charge you for compliance or non-compliance of basically for your PCI compliance. Is one thing also to look out for. Those can range from $10 a month all the way. I've seen $50 a month. I've seen them charge for just calling up for customer service. There's a particular restaurant company that is notorious for that, for charging if you call up and want to talk to some of their tech guys because something's going wrong. So those are the things you have to watch out for, and also the contracts. Contracts can be really killer to some businesses as well.
That's interesting. So we've got all these components. Where does your company come in? I mean, how do you work?
So I don't. Basically, when I look at that statement, I am going to try to make it to where the customer or my merchant is not going to have to pay for the compliance fees, the statement fees. I try to make sure that all that's taken care of. I don't charge them for fees. I don't do anything like that for any paper statements or anything like that until it gets to, the only time I ever do it is if it's a customer with a very small volume, because if it's a small volume, I'm not going to get paid as much. So, but my fee for that is like $5 a month.
So what you do, I mean, the way it works is you ask me as a potential client, or you come in and consult, as we said in the beginning, and you ask for my merchant statement for what, a month or 2 months, or
Usually just 1 month is good.
okay,
Yeah.
most recent statement say, and then you start evaluating it. And when you say you don't want the client, the business, to pay for this fee or that, is that something that you negotiate with
I usually take it out- I
processors,
us- I
or
usually
do you
take
have
it out of
other
my-
processors?
I take it out of my fees.
Okay.
I'll take it out of my fees.
So you take it out, and your fee is a percentage?
It's usually 0.5% markup is what I offer, and what I found out is I'm pretty much the lowest in the area. Sometimes I'll go a lot lower if the volume is higher,
Right.
but if it's $10,000 a month, it's usually going to be 0.5%.
Well, that's another thing we need to understand as business people, that if you don't already, the processing fee structure, it's based on the type of transactions, the size of the transaction, but how much.
Yep.
And so if 10,000 is the number you put out there versus 100,000 a month, you can afford, like many vendors and sellers of merchandise and services, you can charge less because you get more volume coming in. I mean, the discount that applies basically is what it is.
And I help, so there's some guys so I'm an owner, so I can help any business. You have some reps that they have to meet a certain quota, so they can't help these business owners that are only doing $5, $6, $7, $10,000 a month because that spread for them is not there, and their company won't allow it.
Right.
So that's what's good with working with me, because I can help them, and it doesn't bother me to make $20 a month.
So you've got an expertise, if you will, out there in helping, that you can help the smallest of businesses,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
That's the right way to say it. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, but
Micro businesses.
yeah, micro, there you go. As far as credit cards.
Yeah.
Because some businesses, I mean, it's all wire transfer. I mean, I know businesses that get 50% of their volume on money's wired in, or ACHs, or,
Yep.
you know. So the credit cards are just something they offer. The charges. The thing about credit card charges that always bothered me in business is that I would take the charges, it was a line item always, against my revenue, and I was spending 1% of revenue, total revenue, which card revenue was maybe 20%, 30%, whatever. You know, it wasn't like the biggest source of payment I had.
Yeah.
Used to take cash a lot
Yeah.
back in the day, right? Checks even.
Yeah.
And that always bothered me, that I was giving away 1% of my total revenue right off the top.
Yep. And now it's gotten a lot worse. I did a calculation a couple of weeks ago where you were there, actually showing how much you're actually spending when you're using Square, if it's under a certain amount.
Right.
And it can be upwards of 4%.
Yeah, and you mentioned that. That's an important thing, the size of the transaction, which I briefly touched on. And I think what you said at that seminar, that if your average transaction is under $100, then Square's not the way to go.
Yeah.
And there are other choices
Oh, yeah.
that would be better. So it is, and I would encourage people that are listening to this program today or in the future on a playback, that you really need to search out someone like Scott, a consultant, an expert, to kind of wade through all of this. And even if you're only, processing $5,000, $10,000, if you're doing more than that, 50, 100, you really need somebody, because it's dollars. And like in my business, I was giving away 1%, not just on credit transactions, that was overall. Yeah. And that was the number I was always tracking, trying to drive that number down, either by taking fewer credit cards or the reward cards, as I told you that story, where we just said no more. And it reduced that 1% by a little bit. So very, very interesting. Credit card security, a final item I'd like to touch on, and you've mentioned cards, people commit fraud in person, but they really can commit fraud online. Any recommendations to our business owners as far as credit card fraud and whatnot, even though typically they get reimbursed or their customer gets reimbursed, but still it's out there and it costs us all money?
Just if you are taking credit cards and you're using like a subscription or anything like this, if your business is using a subscription, make sure that you have a tokenized vault within your system to make sure that it makes it 10 times harder for those guys to pull that information. It basically puts it on a different number, and it basically changes the whole spectrum of that information from that credit card user. But make sure you're using a tokenized vault within your system.
Well, that's a good piece of advice, obviously. There is another area that I had forgotten about until just a moment ago. Always people talking about Venmo, PayPal. Okay, how does that fit into, I mean, they're not credit cards. So how does that fit in? But it's payment processing.
It's a form of payment. It's supposed to be peer-to-peer. It was not set up for businesses. It's a way for you to take payment, but it's not the correct way, because it was never set up for businesses. Number one, I'll say this: there's a lot of Zelle and all these other peer-to-peer type deals that these scammers are using to scam people out of money. And these scammers are bored and they're smart. I'd hate to see what the world would look like if all these scammers actually did something, and how much innovation would probably come about.
Yeah, something constructive, my dad used to say.
Yeah. It's mom and dads, it's businesses, it's everybody's getting scammed because of just how they're able to work the system. That's how they work. They're looking for loopholes and how to figure out how to take money from people. And it's out there.
Would you have a recommendation to people you consult with about taking those kind of payments?
I tell them not to. If they do, make sure they know that person, like it's a friend, because that's what it was built on, just peer to peer. Hey, we went out to eat and one person paid, and so hey, here's my share.
Yeah,
And
everybody's going to reimburse.
Yeah, it wasn't built to take payments for businesses. I think they even have a limit, like it's like $300, $500 a transaction, which is still pretty high, but.
Well, let's talk about, I guess, the $64 million question, as they used to have a program on TV many, many years ago. Cash. We've heard for 10 plus years, maybe longer, 20 years, cashless society. And now there are businesses, seem to be limited number, but that are not taking cash. They require you to walk in with a card. And they take typically Venmo, and I mean, they take everything. Apple Pay, they take all the credit cards, because that's kind of the choice you make when you don't take cash, in my opinion, because they stopped taking checks a long time ago. They kind of, checks rarely are taken for any kind of payment, direct payment. So what does it look like over the next 5-10 years? What's your opinion?
I think it's gonna be more and more prevalent. I think it's gonna be a big government push. It's costing more money to make money, and so it's all gonna be about forcing the consumer to use some sort of card. We talked about it earlier, being tracked. Everything is being tracked. Don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but every move you make is being tracked. There's actually, I got a buddy of mine has a program. He's a real estate guy, and he's like, I got to show you this. It's every cell phone ping in the area, because they want to track where they can put new markets and new grocery stores and things like that. He goes, everything you do is being tracked. I said, I hate to tell you that, but it is. But it's just going to be another way for not only the government, but the larger companies to track your spending, to basically tell you how you're spending your money and get the marketing for those products that they're using to either ping on your phone or TV or whatever your media is. But it's going to be more and more push, just because it costs more to make money now, and it's all the information provided from using a credit card and your spending
And
habits.
when you say make money, you mean print money, and I
Print
get
money.
that. Well, it's very interesting, and you smiled and commented on the conspiracy theories, but the idea is if it's digital, period, whatever that is, then if you can get a big enough supercomputer, right?
Yep.
We all a lot of us wondered, why are they building these computers faster and bigger, and
all the data centers. There's several in the area. There's
and
huge data
they're going to be
centers.
crunching every time you use the card, every time your cell phone pings,
Yep.
for whatever reasons.
Yep.
I can imagine the IRS won't need to add people. They can cut their force in half or better, because they know how much you're making,
Yep.
how much you're spending, how much you're getting paid, on and on and on. They've written a lot of sci-fi books on those kinds of subjects. Typically, the system gets off track, though, and it's a negative thing. Well, Scott, I can't help thank you enough for taking time to join us today.
Thank you, Rick.
You offer an opportunity for people to look at an expense, again, as we've said several times, that many, many business people, even in larger businesses, don't pay, in my opinion, enough attention to it, and it's an opportunity. We used to call it hidden money, the money that was actually there, available, that was being overlooked, that you could add, go from hitting your top line to putting it on your bottom line, since you're not doing it now. If folks want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
Phone. I have my phone on me 24/7, even when I sleep. You can contact me at 409-718-7133. That's the easiest and quickest way.
Give that phone number one more time, would you?
409-718-7133.
Well, Scott Williams, Juggernaut Payment Processing. Again, you've got a great service, and I encourage people. I assume you'll do an evaluation. You don't charge for that.
Nope, it's free.
So why wouldn't I do it, right?
Yep.
It's one of those. There are a few of those still out there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll stick around for the second half of the show. In the mailbag, I mentioned we're going to go to, we have Sarah asked a question. We have a business strategy document. In other words, they did a business plan. what are the keys to effectively implementing it? So now you got the plan. How do you make it work for you and your business? And the One Best Consult tip of the week, and I laughed the whole time I was putting this together, where is the recession? It's such a general question, but there's so much out there. It's amazing. It's got its own fountain of press and journalism that are being created on where is the recession. So please, I encourage you, stick around. We're going to take our bottom of the hour break, and then we'll be right back with you.
Lone Star Community Radio is ready for the summer. If you or anyone you know is looking for a summer internship, Lone Star Community Radio is a great place to learn the radio and TV business. Contact the station at info@irlonestar.com or call the station's message line at 936-647-3776. Lone Star Community Radio offers a great opportunity to those interested in learning about the radio world.
Hey y'all, it's DJ Mike from Dan Simon, Texas. Join me Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. as I count down the top 10 Texas Red Dirt songs that are packing the dance floor. I'll be featuring local artists and the story behind the hits, shows in the area, as well as new songs that make you want to dance. It's Dance Time in Texas with DJ Mike on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 KCZW and 106.1 KZCC, Conroe, Texas, or online, irlonestar.com.
We have the safest food supply in the world. Strict laws and regulations restrict the usage of hormones, antibiotics, and pesticides within our food supply. Production agriculture practices and technologies such as the use of GMOs, which is not any more or less risky than conventional crop production, has allowed American farmers to produce more food on less acres in environmentally sound ways. Find out more online at pathtotheplate.tamu.edu. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make lives better.
Hey, tune in to the Bridge Podcast TX Tuesdays at 11 a.m., where we are connecting commerce with community, interviewing business owners and leaders in the community, allowing the audience to peek behind the curtain of what inspires, motivates, drives these individuals to have meaningful, positive impact in this community. For more information about the show, log into irlonestar.com/TBPTX.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and I'm Rick Schissler. I'm your host. I'm a Silver Fox advisor, as well as being the founder of OneBestConsult.com. That's the number one, bestconsult.com. OneBestConsult.com is a place you can go, click, join us. It's a kind of a forum on business and business education. Questions asked by the folks that are members. There's no cost. It's just a place for you to connect. You have a business issue, concerned about something in business. Some of the issues that we talk about on this program, they come right from that discussion in the open forum we have. So please consider going to onebestconsult.com and joining us. Well, let's go to the mailbag. As I mentioned before we went to the break, a mailbag item was offered by Sarah. And Sarah asked, we have a business strategy document now, which congratulations. I have read so many times that 80+% of the businesses in this country, large and small, really don't have a business plan, a business strategy. There are all kinds of different names and all kinds of different types of documents, but basically they're a plan on where you want to go with the business. And Sarah and her company have a plan. And she asked the question, what are the keys to effectively implementing that plan? And I think that's pretty straightforward, but so many times people will do the business plan and then they don't effectively implement the plan. I think first and foremost, implementation requires that everybody in the organization get on board. In other words, all the way from Sarah's office, she's the owner, she's the boss, all the way down to the shop floor, if you will. Everybody has to be on board. I know a number of companies, particularly small businesses, sometimes the owner a little bit concerned or reluctant to share certain information with the employees. But that's something you have to work out yourself. It doesn't mean you have to take the entire plan and just pass out copies. I don't know that I would do that. But if I want the guys in the shop and the folks in the office and our sales team and everybody on board, I have to provide them with some kind of information of what our business strategy is. What are we trying to do? Think about it. You're a salesperson for the XYZ company, and you don't know what the strategy is. Now, you know what the products are, but you have no idea where the company is coming from in developing those products, and what are the new products, and what kind of market share. I mean, the list goes on. And obviously, most companies will convey some information to that salesperson so they have an idea, direction, other than opening the box on the product and say it does this, this, and this. Oh, but it might not do this. But take your strategy and share it with the people in your business, first and foremost, because you want to make sure those people, at very least, are on the same page. The second thing you want to do is recognize that the data you get from your business and the business intelligence information, and somebody's out there rolling their eyes, I can feel it. Well, I have 2 employees and I don't have any data. Well, you do have data. You have some type of way you record transactions, cash register. You've got data. Don't tell me you never look and see what your sales are on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. At some point, at the very least, that's data. Now, I would hope that you have other data that you try to track as far as what types of products or have the best margin, what's selling, what's not. Perhaps a little more than just gut instinct. Same with services. What's working? What could we be doing? What are my competitors doing? What's happening on a national basis that I might be able to tap into, and on and on and on. So that's data, that's intelligence. You need to know those things in order to most effectively implement your strategy. And hopefully you knew those things before you developed the strategy, because you want to do the strategy. One of the things is that it's the most likely to be successful and succeed and get you where you want your business to go. A third area I think is important is to evaluate your company's values, along with all the other information such as market position. Do you want a large share of the market? Do you want some share? Do you want only the high end, the low end? All those general business questions get rolled up into a business strategy, and a business strategy is not going to be effective if it works against the values, your company values that you've established. A lot of times just you have established them because they're your values, but they're still the values of the company, and everyone who works in the company needs to be aware and buy into those values, in turn buy into that strategy that you're trying to make happen. Last but not least is bring some kind of focus. Again, I think you've got to reveal a certain amount of information to your employees. It doesn't have to be a great deal of information, but I think you've got to be willing to share certain things if you want to effectively implement a business strategy, any kind of plan. But again, I recognize, respect that a lot of folks, especially small business owners, are reluctant. But there's a getting on and getting off point, in my opinion, for every business in sharing information. Obviously, what you're comfortable with as an owner is very important, but this is also potentially a place where you need to think outside the box, the old expression, and potentially you will see the effective implementation of your business strategy, your business plan go way up when you share a bit of information and give consistent feedback on a regular basis to the people that are responsible from top to bottom in your organization. We're going to take a short break. It'll be our final break of the day. And when we come back, we're going to do the One Best Consult Tip of the Week and have a little fun. It's called Where is the Recession? And I want to remind you before we go to break is a recording of today's show, video, audio, will be available in a couple days. You can find it right here on Lone Star Community Radio at irlonestar.com/TWBH, the weekly business hour. Go to our page on the Lone Star site and you'll see that recording. You can listen to it, or if you are of a mind, share it. Please share it with someone you know in business who might benefit from being connected to the weekly business hour. So please stay with us and we'll be right back with you.
What is homelessness? Have you seen parents struggle to find a job without having transportation or childcare? What about the children sleeping in cars with nothing to eat? Families shouldn't have to struggle to survive, and children should not be homeless. Family Promise of Montgomery County serves the needs of homeless families and their children. Learn about ways you can help and learn about partnership opportunities at www.familypromiseofmc.org or call our day center at 936-441-8778.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The engineer just told me we have a very limited amount of time, so I'm going to take that tip of the week and I'm going to put a blog together and post it. But I'm also I'm going to bring it back next week because I think about all this conversation, all this journalistic effort to talk about the recession and what impact, this is where I want to go with it, does it really have on my business? And I think it's important because, boy, the information is overflowing out there. The discussions on TV, cable networks, everywhere. It's everywhere I go. Hadn't seen any billboards yet, but I'm sure they'll come. So I want to kind of hook you in or connect you with all that the recession will or will not bring us. So we'll talk about that next week. In the meantime, I've got to close out the show. And again, I'm sorry I just didn't take track of my time well enough because I really want to talk about that. First, I want to thank, though, Scott Williams of Juggernaut Payment Processing. And again, I encourage you to contact Scott and his company to make sure your company is not overpaying for its credit card processing, because the chances are you are. So he offers a free consultation evaluation. That alone, I think, will be worth your time, at least give you a better understanding of what credit card processing, all the things that go into evaluating your company and what fee you get charged. Also, please put a note on your calendar. Join us next week. We'll have another live show next week, right here at 11 o'clock on Monday at irlonestar.com or on FM 104.5, 106.1 Conroe City Radio. And as I always encourage people, till next week, stay engaged and always, always keep your focus on what counts in your business. Thanks.